Okay, everyone, we are going to get started this morning. Mark, Andrew, Hayden, and Ruth, I have promoted you all to panelists. I currently have you muted. I'm going to, if you want to add anything into what I'm talking about, please just let me know through chat. It's just that there's a lot of background noise that happens, and I just don't want it to be distracting when one or the other of us is talking. So please just raise your hand or just put something in the comment section for me, and we will unmute you. So welcome to another rendition of the coronavirus and an update from BLC. As you know, we had our second employee positive case as of yesterday. Those who were in close contact with that person were notified. We did do research. So please don't make assumptions just because you see somebody off on the schedule that it must be them, because it likely is not. So we are changing some office protocols, not necessarily that we're changing it, but we are going to be more strict on it. We are not allowing anyone into the office unless they work in the office. If you need something from 302 or 101, you are to call somebody within the office to get it for you, and they will bring it out to you. We will be changing the combinations on the locks at 302 and 101. And we'll give those out to personnel who need to get into the office to do actual work here on a regular basis. As I mentioned, if you do need to get in, please call the office and we will come get you. Obviously, there are going to be times that we're still going to have employee meetings in the office. You'll be required to wear a mask while you are here and to sanitize your hands upon entering the office if you do have a meeting here. The meetings will require all people to have a mask on throughout the meeting. For scheduling, we are going to do our best to set teams and stick to those teams at all times so that we can minimize the impact if somebody is positive. We will try not to schedule employees with other teams without the consent of an executive team member. That means that if Kim is doing a schedule and two people on a team are off voluntarily and leaving one person on that team, and that person can't run the job site, Kim will need to go to Mark to get permission to put that person on a new team. The reason, again, we're just trying to minimize the impact if somebody is positive, that we're not putting somebody in 3 or 4 different teams. And now we've got 3 or 4 different teams shutting down and basically closing an entire department. If 2 or more teams are on the same site together, as can happen in fall cleanups, we're going to ask that you remain apart from one another. Do not come together to have lunch, to have breaks. When you're working with one another in a line, you should all be remaining 6 feet apart at all times or further to blow your rows. In field, Mark is going to talk about this portion, so I am going to unmute him and ask him to unmute his mic. Oh, sorry, Mark, I accidentally muted you. I hit another button. Do it again. All right, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Angie, do you mind if I start my video real briefly?
You have a video?
Well, no. So
oh, yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, what are you doing?
I know I'm not the prettiest mug in the world, but.
Okay, here you go. You're good.
Okay, here we go. All right, so good morning, everybody. So we're obviously at a point where we're full throttle with all these precautions, and one I wanted to talk about are masks. Jeff has taken the time to provide everybody and purchase these custom Belknap masks. Some of the recommendations out there are that neck gaiters aren't great. However, Jeff went to the degree of getting these pouches in here with little filters that are replaceable. And even without that filter, you get 3 layers of cloth protection. So the masks are to be worn at all times. If you guys and girls don't enjoy this one for whatever reason, we just ask that you do wear one that's compliant and have it with you and around your neck all the time. That is mandatory. You're allowed to take a break when you need to take the mask off, obviously, but please take the time to think about who you're around and how you're interacting with either your clients, your team members, family members, whatnot. And just make sure you're, 6 to 10 feet apart, I believe is what we're saying, Ange. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So, yeah, we hope these help. They should be a little more easy to use and comfortable when working. I was up in Loon a couple weekends ago helping a crew work for the day, and I found that these were just a lot easier to interact with people in terms of, having it always there and ready and just easy to pull up and pull down when you needed to. So, again, it's mandatory. If you are not in the mood to wear a mask at work, then we're going to ask you to go home. That is your choice, and you are entitled to that choice. However, in the best interest of protecting everybody here and their families, that is what we are doing. As one note, these tend to run a little large. I have a rather large pumpkin on my shoulders here, and it is a little loose, but you can easily stitch up the back or come up with a creative way to make them a little tighter if you have a normal human head, unlike me. And I think Angie also offered as well, if you need anything sewed up or whatnot, she'd be happy to help. So.
Yep.
Any questions, feel free to reach out and ask.
One thing I can add to that, Mark, with the size of them, I know mine felt like right off my face. So all I did is I took a hair elastic, pulled it back, and made kind of like a ponytail in the back to tighten that mask up around my face, and it worked great. Quick and simple solution.
Yeah, I haven't had hair ties for years, Angie.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Kristen does, so you can get one from your girlfriend.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm going to remove your video now because we've had enough of you this morning. And I'm going to mute you. And Hayden, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And if you would like your video on, just let me know because you've got the next segment.
Sure, go for it.
All right. There you go, sir. You're talking social distancing this morning.
Yes. So thanks for everybody joining on today. I am rather passionate about this social distancing, only because I think at times we get wrapped up into our tasks and what we're doing, and we sort of forget about your space. Social distancing is all about your space, what your space is, and it's 6 to 10 feet around you is your space. And it's your responsibility, as well as the responsibilities of the balance of your crew, to help maintain those spaces that are around each of you. It's been something that's been really challenging for me when we first started getting back into the field for sales calls in the spring, and moving around when I was with clients on the site. It's almost creates awkward situations where you have to move to demonstrate or show somebody something, but they're in your way. and I would have to ask, excuse me, but can you step aside so I can go over here? But it shows that you're being respectful, not only of your space, but of their space as well. I just can't, get this point across hard enough to really, it's just your responsibility, as well as the responsibility of your team, to be cognizant of where you are on the site. And if you have to ask someone to move, or because it's the only path to go someplace, or if you're getting ready to decide to move somewhere, let's move. Talk about it. I know it's awkward. But in the same breath, it's the responsibility of your team, because if somebody on your team becomes infected, then guess what? Everybody goes home for 14 days. And that sucks. It not only sucks for you, but it sucks for the company as well. We're closing in on the end of the season. We've got typically another good month of weather that we can continue to work before the weather turns kind of sour on us, but you know, it's you're not going to have any fun at home for 14 days all by yourself. And I can only impress upon you to really try to make sure you're holding each other accountable to managing your social distancing protocols and your space. And I refer to it as your space because it is your space. So it just can't stress it enough that this is real. New Hampshire had over 300 cases yesterday alone. And if you go back in time and go a month, even 5 weeks ago, we were pushing 3, 4, 5, 10 cases a day, pretty manageable. But at 300 cases a day, it becomes very taxing, not only on your family, but on the company as well as society because of the potential of having someone have to go to the hospital. I was listening to NPR as I usually do on the way in here, and they were talking about somebody from Montana who was in the healthcare industry. And so in their particular hospital, which is the largest hospital in Montana, they have 24 ICU beds. Well, they had 45 people in the ICU at the hospital, and it just, you can go on, but this is for real. And it's really up to us to take on the personal responsibility to make sure we follow the protocols that these experts and that understand what these diseases do. But the implications are really can be devastating. And if you've listened to any of the news that's interviews people in the healthcare industry, and they've actually witnessed people coming in and not making it. They didn't make it through, but they died alone because the family can't come in. So please take it seriously. You know, we talk about us being a family, and we are. Okay, so we're a family of 80. But in the same breath, we all interact on a day-to-day basis with one another, and we need to respect one another as far as these spaces go and what these protocols mean. Believe me, it's no fun for us either. So please take it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. Okay, so next up, we are going to have Andrew talk about personal vehicle use protocol. Andrew, would you like your video on or just use your mic?
Mic is fine.
Okay, good to go.
So basically, we're looking into with our insurance company and the Department of Labor as far as what we can and can't do as far as people taking their own vehicles to job sites or in between job sites while they're on the clock, because there's ramifications behind that if you get into an accident with that. So we're finding out what exactly we can do with that stuff. We don't have the answers today, but we're looking into that. Also, I've talked with Brian as far as scheduling goes. You may find that on big sites like Tilton School, the industrial park, you're meeting directly on site other than the drivers of the vehicle. Well, that sounds all normal and what we've been doing. But if we're working on Governor's Island, you may find on the schedule we're asking you to park at the TJ Maxx parking lot next to Shaw's in Guilford. Why is that? Well, it minimizes the amount of time that people will be in the truck together, because we can't have 5 or 6 personal vehicles in a driveway at Governor's Island. It just doesn't work. So go back to Hayden's definition of close contact, and it's 15 minutes whenever you're within 6 feet of a person. So if we all park at TJ Maxx as an example, you're only going to be in the truck for hopefully less than 10 minutes. So it limits that exposure. It doesn't eliminate it, but it limits it. And we're just trying to show, okay, this is what we're doing to minimize risk. And so if anybody sees that on the schedule, and I'm sure Brian will explain it as well too, but that's why that we're doing it. I've also reached out to Dustin, and he's looking into putting in plexiglass partitions in our crew cab trucks, meaning the trucks that have 4 doors and 2 seats, kind of like a taxi cab, where it again limits when you're riding in a truck, it limits the exposure, so to speak, between front and back. And as an example, if somebody's really doesn't want to ride in the truck and there's 3 people, well, that person can ride in the back by themselves with that petition up. But again, this is, we're looking into these things. The likelihood of these petitions being in will probably be, after Thanksgiving when we get into, walkway or snow season as well. So that's, again, it's another precaution or something that we're doing to minimize the risk. And the possible mileage reimbursement plan, that if we reimburse people for mileage, the stipulation is that they have to carry a certain level of insurance on their vehicle to do that. And again, we're looking into that. It's, if anyone's aware of or familiar with insurance policies, it's a $250,000 / $500,000 limits that people have to have on their personal vehicles from a liability standpoint to get paid mileage back, because that's what our insurance company tells us that we have to do. Because again, there's a risk there that people are driving in their own personal vehicles, and if they get into an accident, yep, it goes to their insurance first, but then it can also, if it goes beyond the Belknap limits of liability, that it can then go against Belknap's insurance company as well too. So again, if people have questions about that, please reach out to myself or Ruth for that. But again, we're looking into all 3 of these things that I've talked about this morning, to get clarity on it, to get as much as information as we can, instead of just throwing out a policy. We're looking into these things, and we'll have answers and a process here soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Well, I saw the question from Tim. Would this mileage plan go for all departments or just A? No, it's all departments. But again, everybody, if you're driving a personal vehicle and expect to get reimbursed, you have to carry that certain amount of insurance. Plus, also to be clear and transparent, that there also needs to be a good reason why are you taking your own vehicle, versus maybe taking a company vehicle that you'd be by yourself in, because that's another thing that may happen down the line, is that if we go to a job site, whether it's Department A or B, if it only requires one vehicle to go there and there's 2 people going there from Belknap, we may say, you know what, there's an extra company truck available. Why doesn't that second person hop in that and drive that, as long as they're able to drive a Belknap vehicle? So it's not a cut and dry answer. I guess the best thing to say is that if you do want to drive your own vehicle to a job site or between job sites, you need to talk to myself or Mark first about that and the reasons why. Also want to be clear that if you're asked to be at TJ Maxx for 7 a.m. or a project site for 8 a.m. because everybody's meeting on site anyways, your time starts when you're asked to be on that site, like 7, 8 o'clock, whatever it is. You don't get paid mileage to drive from your house to your first job site or meeting place.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to mute you now. Mark, I'm going to ask you to unmute just for a moment. A question came in through the chat regarding sanitization practices, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of answer that, as you did answer it, and you're really good about those things. So if you want to give that a go.
So yeah, it's funny. So I down here in the yard, and I'm distributing masks into some of the work trucks for people, and even into some of their own personal vehicles. Sanitization is very, very, very important. Belknap has provided both disinfectants and cleaners of different sorts that are available to you. The requirement is that, every time you interact with something and your hands are on it, you need to wipe it down. As I was just doing this in the yard and going in and out of my truck and into other people's trucks, I live in, it's my normal procedure now. I think I probably just sanitize my hands 15 times just because I have hand sanitizer in my truck. Get into a routine for yourself. There was the last Zoom meeting we had. I was actually working in the field with a crew, and we got back at the end of the day, and I parked the truck that I was driving, and I said, oh, I got to wipe everything down, and literally wipe down everything that you touch. Radio knobs, heater knobs, dump body controllers, the handles to get in and out of the truck, the window buttons, the shifter, everything. It didn't take me 2 minutes to do all of that to this one truck very thoroughly. And it was kind of cool as I did that, and I watched other people come in to end their day. All but one person was already on it, and they were sanitizing their truck without even me having to ask, and I checked in with everybody. So, and the one person who didn't was kind of like, oh, geez, we have to do that every day. Yes, we have to do that every day. Whether it's a truck, a loader, an excavator, a ditch witch, a shovel. If you are using that tool, please sanitize it before it goes into other people's hands. And even if you are the primary driver of that vehicle, don't assume that you're the only one that is going to drive it or just be in it the next day, because you might call out sick and we might have to do something different to get that truck to site. So again, small detail, but a huge detail that will help us all stay safe and continue to press forward here. I did want to throw in just a comment here is that, there's a lot of this going around now. I know many of us with children are also getting notifications from school systems that, our kids have been around it, exposure here, hockey programs, soccer programs, whatever it is, it's all real. We've had 2 people now at Belknap test positive, but there's also another depth to this out there that some people might not know. Meaning there's been 2 people at Belknap that have lost loved ones due to COVID. There's, I don't know how many people that have had to quarantine because of it. It's kind of interesting. I'm personally changing my whole approach in my personal life. Today's my son's 13th birthday, and we're not going to have a birthday party for him outside of those in our household. Thanksgiving, I had to tell my mother and sister last night that, we're going to have a virtual turkey day. So you got to be creative and acknowledge that, just because it's your family doesn't mean it's always safe. It's happening out there, and minimize, sanitize. You got to pay attention to it and accept the fact this is real. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. A point has been brought up that crew leaders need to make sure that the spray bottles are in the trucks and paper towels. Agree with that. There are big bottles of sanitizer at each location. We also have provided filters so that you can transfer the hand sanitizer into smaller bottles. Much easier than just trying to dump it in from one to the other, because we know that's going to make a mess. Funnels, sorry, Hayden, filters, funnels, it's all the same thing. So on that, Candy was the one that brought that up. After this meeting, we are going to ask crew leaders, account managers, and project managers to stay on the call so that we can go over specific responsibilities with you, because we really haven't outlined that yet. And it's important that we do that for each of you, and make sure that you're doing your part to help us as well. Yeah, so Andrew just mentioned boxes of paper towels and hand sanitizer inside the Archon garage, but they need to call Jim or Dustin to bring it out. Archon will be locked as well. And I will be, that's correct. Yes, Archon, we're going to be changing the combination there as well. Jim and Dustin and just a few other people will have permission to get that combination to get in regularly. Other than that, you will have to contact somebody inside the garage to get what you need from inside the garage. Okay, so next, the well check protocol. So if you fail any of the tests, please call me immediately. I don't have time in the morning to sit there and look through my email every 5 minutes to see if somebody failed their COVID test on Whip Around. So if you fail your test for any reason, call either my work phone or my personal phone. Both have become attached to my hips through this. If I don't answer one for some reason, just call the other. And I will ask you about your symptoms, and we will figure out whether or not you need to quarantine, maybe get tested, or if you're okay to come to work. My numbers are here. If you don't have them here, just reach out to me and I would be happy to talk to you or send these to you. For CCL employees, you're welcome to also call me directly, and then I can reach out to Jan to let her know what's going on. She's also available for calls, I'm going to assume. And then she can call me if she has any questions, and we'll just take it from there. Jan asked for CCL if they will be getting the BLC neck gaiters. I believe the answer is yes. I talked to Jeff yesterday. I can find him and unmute him, and he could answer much better than, oh, JK. Sometimes I don't know my alphabet. Hold on, I'm gonna find him. All right, Jeff, I'm allowing you to talk.
Yeah, my plan is to bring them by tomorrow. I mean, today.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Yay. So yes, you guys will have them. Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Now I don't know where you are in the list to mute you. Could you just mute your phone for me?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. So that was the wellness check protocol. As far as that as well, we're going to be assigning people in specific departments to go through their departments each day to make sure that wellness checks were completed based on who is scheduled. It was taking me 2 to 2.5 hours to do that daily, and obviously that's just not feasible. It will likely be the scheduling people who will be handling this. It's not finalized, but we will be having people checking that every single day. So,
Hey, Angie,
yep.
could you talk a little more in depth, sorry to interrupt, about some of those questions and criteria that you ask to staff when they've potentially been exposed to another staff member, and what makes the decision for whether they have to quarantine or not?
Sure. So if somebody tests positive, the questions that I have to ask is, have you been within 6 feet of the person for more than 15 minutes in the last 14 days? And if so, were you wearing your mask at all times? And have you ridden together in a vehicle? Were you wearing your mask at that time? And that's basically it, because if any of those things are, if the answer is yes or no, obviously, if you're not wearing your mask, it's an automatic. I don't care if you're 6 feet away. If you've not been wearing your mask at this point, we are just going to say you need to quarantine for 14 days. If you call me and tell me that you're sick on any given day, I'm just going to ask you about your symptoms, such as, do you have a runny nose? Do you have a headache? Do you have a fever? Do you have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea? Are you congested? Because if you have a common cold and you have a wet cough and you're coughing up phlegm, it's unlikely to be COVID. And based on other symptoms or no other symptoms, and if you know you've been in contact with someone who just has a head cold and it's all head cold symptoms, we're just going to ask you to stay home until your symptoms have subsided, just because we don't want a cold going around either and causing unnecessary panic. And these are protocols that we've tried to have in place in the past. We've asked people not to come in if they've got a head cold. We've asked people not to come in for 24 hours after their last bout of diarrhea or vomiting. It's basically the same thing as that the schools do. Look, if you've got any type of symptom that could be contagious, we don't want you here. We don't want it running rampant through the company, period, regardless if it's COVID or something else. But with COVID, we have to wait 3 days until symptoms have passed, so that we know for sure that it was just a viral infection and not COVID. Did that answer the question, Mark? I hope so.
Yeah, I do believe so. I guess, the point I wanted to emphasize there is that, if you're on a job site with someone who tests positive, the answer isn't always immediately, okay, you have to quarantine as well. There's important questions. And if you're following the protocols that we're asking you to follow, we might let you stay at work, and that's good. There's going to be situations here where, there's currently 80 hours of time that the government will support of you being out of work due to a COVID reason. And for some people, that's been maxed out or close to maxed out already, just based on 2 exposures. So, once you've done that 80 hours, then there's no support, there's no pay, unless you have, vacation time or earned time, anything like that. So that's the point I wanted everybody to understand. Follow the protocols, stay 6 to 10 feet apart, sanitize. If you do those things and you work with someone who tests positive, you will likely be able to stay at work. If you're within someone's 6-foot space, no mask, you're going home. You're going to be in the 2-week quarantine as well. And it's unfortunate, but that's this world we live in today. So
Absolutely. And I ask that people not take advantage of that 80 hours. I trust all of you, but I've seen a lot of HR professionals reaching out to other HR professionals saying, we really think that this person's just saying that they've got these symptoms to get the 80 hours paid. They're going to go get a test, but they don't want to do the rapid test. So now they've got to wait for a longer period to come back. It's really important to understand that 80 hours is for emergency situations. It is to protect you and to make sure that you have it available in the case that you get COVID or you're exposed to somebody, truly exposed to someone that has it, so that you can quarantine and know that you still have a paycheck coming in. If you abuse that and use those 80 hours and then you end up with COVID, we're not paying you. You made that choice. So, and we don't have to. It's, once the 80 hours is used up, the 80 hours is also expiring on December 31st of this year. I don't know if Congress is going to extend that or create a new plan for it. So, but after December 31st, right now, that no longer is going to be an option. We can only hope that they extend it, hopefully. So personal time and next step. So again, it's risk versus reward. And that's what I want to go over. Your time away from here. I know that the holidays are coming up. I know that people want to see their loved ones. I do as well. With numbers rising, my parents and I have already talked, and even though they live less than a mile away from me, I'm not going to be seeing them on Thanksgiving. It just is not worth the risk to them, to me, to anybody in this office, for me to spend that time with my parents right now and then have the risk of either giving them COVID or bringing COVID back from them and bringing it into the office. So I really hope that all of you think long and hard about your out of work activities and how that can impact not just Belknap, but your personal life. And the people around you, the people that you love, your children, your parents, the people who could be highly susceptible to this because they have asthma or lung issues. A next step for us could potentially be a 14-day shutdown if it's necessary. We do not want to have to go down that road, but if we continue to get cases at a high rate, or people continually come in contact with other people who have COVID, we may have to take that step. Whether or not it's paid or unpaid, we would have to speak to lawyers, the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, and decide if that would be covered under the FFCRA or if it's totally up to us. So please be aware that that could potentially be a next step if this continues. As Mark had said before, if you don't care, stay home. It's really that simple. I will be going home today to put a sign on my door that says, do not enter. Masks are required, period. If you don't live in my home, you don't need to be there. And unfortunately, that's just where it's going right now. I need to protect my job. I need to protect my son. I need to make sure that the people around me are taken care of.
Hey, Angie, Mark again.
Yep.
In terms of travel restrictions and things of that nature, number one, I want to thank everybody who has communicated well in terms of their personal plans. We have had a few people travel outside of New England, and they've been very transparent with that. And we have accommodated that for different reasons. And those folks have had to do a 2-week quarantine post returning to New Hampshire. So there's a big point of importance here with everybody in that topic, because I've heard some rumblings of people saying, well, you know what, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to travel, not tell anyone, and come back, and I'm still going to work. Not cool.
Mm-mm.
You gotta be honest with us, and I'll tell you what, if we find out that your statements have not been honest, that is quite a statement as to who you are as a person and your character. So if you're falsifying that information, that will be discussed on a very, very, very high level. It's not a joke. And whether employment is decided to continue at that point or not, it's out of respect to everybody else, their families, and everybody else that works here. That's not going to be taken lightly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. So rapid testing, someone let us know today that Mass General is no longer allowing or doing the rapid testing because the test results are very inaccurate. There are a lot of false positives going on with rapid testing. With that being said, we are no longer going to accept rapid test results. We are going to ask or recommend that you go to CVS. They have 2 to 3 day results, and you can go to their website and fill out a COVID questionnaire where they will determine if you qualify for a COVID test or not. You need to be very, very honest with your answers when you're going through that. And then you can just go right up to their drive-through, let them know that you're there for a COVID test. They're going to ask you obviously questions about your symptoms. They're going to hand you the test and explain to you how to administer it to yourself. You will then give the test back and you'll get results within 2 to 3 days. So we will no longer be recommending that people go to Convenient MD. We will actually be recommending CVS as a location to get your testing done. I didn't see any additional questions coming up over the last few minutes, but I will leave this open for a moment. If anybody else has any other questions that they would like to ask. Okay, great. So what I'm gonna, oh, there's one. So the question was asked if there's any reimbursement on CVS COVID tests. At this time, we do not have a reimbursement program. If you have insurance, it should be free. Insurance is supposed to be covering it, period. So CVS, I do believe, offers free testing. You can contact the CVS that you're going to and ask them if they are part of that program. If not, continue to call around. If you don't have insurance, it's not necessarily free. We cannot force you to have a COVID test. We can only force you to quarantine for so many days from the first start of your symptom. But you would need a doctor's note to return to work. So you would have to go see your PCP or another provider to say that you're good to come back to work at that time. Is it at any pharmacy or just CVS? Tim, as far as I know, CVS is the one that is doing it, and I believe they are doing it for free. Again, I would just ask them. You can contact Walgreens and Rite Aid and see if they are providing it as well. CVS is just the most known one that I'm aware of at this time, and I can do some more research as well and try to get that information out as soon as I can to all of you. That is a fantastic question, Mike Normandin, and I'm not sure what the answer is to that. So the question is, are we still passing in paperwork, or should we send images to limit exposure? That is a very good question, and we will have an answer for you by the end of today. My personal opinion would be to not pass in any paperwork. However, if you're sanitizing regularly throughout the day, you're not licking your fingers before you touch your paperwork, it probably is minimized, or you're wearing gloves while you're handling your paperwork, that would absolutely minimize it. But we will discuss that and get back to you for sure. Thank you for asking that. All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in at this time. So what I'm going to ask is that anybody who is not a crew leader to go ahead and leave the call. For CCL, I think we would have Jan, Tim, Turl. I think that's it. You know who you are. If you are a team leader for CCL, please stay on the call as well.
Hey, Ange.
Yep.
Hey, final thought. If anybody has any ideas of things we can improve, reach out. Okay? We're all in this together. If anybody needs support of any kind, personally or professionally, please reach out. That's what we're all here for. So yeah, open doors both ways.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.